The right of a competent, terminally ill person to avoid excruciating pain and embrace a timely and dignified death bears the sanction of history and is implicit in the concept of ordered liberty. That was a quote from Timothy Quill from the American Civil Liberties Union. Okay, so in case you didn't catch from my quote, I'm talking about euthanasia today. So basically, my main claim on it is that the choice of life or death is a basic human right. Let me go over some of my supporting claims. So my first one is, we as individuals own our body, and it's not the government. Second thing I'm going to touch is, death is a private decision. It's something that's personal. And my third supporting claim is that other countries are using assisted suicide. That's another term for euthanasia. Okay. So back to the first supporting claim. A person's body is owned by the individual and not a government. This means that a person has a right to their own body. So let's go back to 1973, Roe versus Wade. It was a big case that allowed women to have abortions. So that was a big deal in human rights because it gave women a choice to decide what they wanted to do with their body. So that's a big deal. And in terms of having choice. Okay, so my second supporting claim is that death is a private decision. As long as you're not harming anyone, it's yours to make. So I want to kind of cite the Constitution, because it says we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to everyone that means something different. But to someone who's terminally ill, who has cancer and is going through excruciating pain, that might be to have a more subtle death than having it dragged on. So I think it's again, it goes back to someone's choice of what their rights are and what they choose to do. Okay, so on to my third supporting claim. Euthanasia is commonly accepted in other parts of the world. For example, the Netherlands, like Norway, Amsterdam. Since 2006, every year beyond that, the rates of euthanasia have been rising. And actually last year, it shot up to 13% from the previous numbers. And that was according to a Yahoo News article that I read. So I think it's really cool that people across the world are starting to use their rights, and I think that's a pretty basic human right that should be acknowledged, to decide whether you want to end your life if you're going through, I think, like if you have a terminal illness like cancer or other diseases. Yeah, so just so I can touch on everything again, I think that we as individuals own ourselves, and it's not the government's job to tell us what we can do with our bodies. And then again, that death is a private issue, and it's a personal thing, and everyone will have a different opinion. And my third, that other countries are taking part in this too, so it's becoming a global thing. And that is my speech. Thank you guys.
All right, Derek, the opening quote is fine, setting up what the subject is. The controversy doesn't really sound much like it's a factual issue. It sounds more like it's a claim of value. There are some factual claims about whether or not this right is protected under current law, or whether or not this right is something that can be found as that there's historical precedent on it. But the argument, especially on the second point that you present, really is all value-based. It says that this is the right thing to do, that people have, it's unjust or unfair in some way to deny them access to this. And so I think you're a little bit off base on the claim of fact issue, and you've got more of a claim of value. When you say, well, you know, it's somebody's personal choice to make, well, okay, that's true, but you also have to tell us why being able to make that choice is harmful or beneficial, and you need to explain why it's beneficial. The closest you come to that is the implication that people have some kind of suffering as a result of their terminal illness, but there's no evidence on the pain and suffering. There's no information that suggests that they don't have alternatives to killing themselves as a way of getting rid of their pain and suffering. So on the need issue, which is really where the claim of fact is on this, there's not any development, there's not any evidence. On the value issue, you're kind of depending on hypothetical circumstances and a couple of comparisons. Now, the data that you have on the third point about other countries having access to this and that it's increasingly being used, well, here's where there could be an argument. So, what is the benefit of it increasingly being used? What is the advantage, or what need has that solved? The fact that it's gone up 14% or 13%, you had a number there that was something like that. Why is that something that we should be glad about? Does it, like you said, if there's pain and suffering that was not prevented by medication and treatment that these patients had, then those people have been relieved of that. If it has produced some social benefit, maybe you could argue for that social benefit. But you're mostly, like I said, kind of trapped back in that idea that this is a right that somebody has, and whenever you're dealing with rights issues, you may very well, in fact, be dealing with a claim of value. The secondary points are laid out. The first time that they come through, they don't always sound like claims. I thought that you were a little bit better in the body of the speech, making them sound like claims, so I thought that was okay. The examples mostly seem hypothetical in nature. You had the one statistic that you gave a source citation on. There's no, except for the introductory quote, there isn't really any use of authority in this field. There was maybe one inference about a court case that you mentioned. How Roe versus Wade applies in this circumstance needs to be explained a little bit more, and I'm sure there are plenty of authorities on the legal system that could have testified to that, and that would have been maybe a good piece of expert testimony to use on that point. On the delivery issues, your pacing, look, it's a little slow, but I think that doesn't hurt automatically because it makes it easy to follow what you're talking about. But it does sound a little like you are hesitant at times, and because you're not making any audience contact, that also seems to suggest that you are less familiar with the argument than you might otherwise be, and I think that you need to be a little bit more practiced, and that would help. All right, thank you.